All right. Okay, so in the last few lessons, we've been talking about growing problems of Rome. Devolves into, well, you get all these Band-Aid fixes, devolves into civil wars, and then you get the death of the Republic. In this video lesson, or in this lesson, we're going to talk more about just, what is this death of the Republic that I kept talking about? Like, well, why do we say death of the Republic, start of the Empire? Well, it's one of those things where it's not just like someone came out. It's not like Emperor Palpatine, as I was alluding to beforehand from Star Wars. I was like, I'm going to reform the Republic into a first galactic empire. That type of move is what basically almost Julius Caesar did and got himself killed. Augustus, a little bit more sly than that. And he realizes, you need a strong hand to just kind of put Rome right. Not allow civil wars to happen anymore. One of the major reasons for the civil wars is armies are too loyal to different generals, so we need to make sure all armies are loyal to just me. And so he forms a new office within the Republic. So how do we put this? Basically, all the people during the time of Augustus didn't think the Republic was dead. We like today we look back and say that at that point the Republic is dead. But the Romans for a long time were thinking, no, the Republic is not dead. We just have a new office called Imperator. And this is an office that Octavian came up with, basically saying that, another way he liked to call it is the Princeps. He called himself the Princeps, the first citizen of Rome. But under this idea of Imperator, he basically just says, all right, Imperator is for life, meaning you're for life. And they're only going to have one power, and that is, I'll just bring all this up right now. But basically, you just have the power of veto. And then the other thing that's given is like, well, you also have control of all the territories of Rome, but not the core area of, you could say, what was the Republic. You could say like Greece and Italy, or mostly just Italy, is known as like the core area of the Republic, and the Senate has control of that area, but all the extra territories out there where all the legions are, of course, well, those armies are controlled by the Imperator. And that way it just kind of keeps the peace. So that's a lot of power given to this one office, which is still technically an office within the Republic. It's a constitutional office. Like they made an amendment to their constitution to put it in. But it effectively kills the Republic because now one person has so much power that he really can't be challenged. Augustus does, or I shouldn't say, Octavian does play up on this idea that he must have divine blood, and he claims descendancy from Mars himself because he belongs to the same family from Romulus. Raymond names himself Augustus, more of this divine name, and from this point on he's known as the Augustus. And even though he names himself that, like later on in the empire, that actually becomes a term itself, like an office of itself. I am a full Augustus. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself, and I hope that's making sense a little bit, but he is the one guy in charge, and he is definitely in charge. No one can challenge him. And in this office of Imperator, he is holding full sway. And the ingenious idea behind this is people don't think the Republic is dead with this. And people feel like they can do what they want, but it's just, how do I put this? Well, I guess I say it very well right there. He's basically he tells everybody what to do by telling them what they can't do because he has a permanent veto. Anyways, but this is viewed later on, and definitely by us today, that this is the death of the Republic. When Octavian becomes the first Imperator, renames himself Augustus, and essentially has control of the armies as well as a permanent veto within the government itself. That is the death of the Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. And all pretense is just set aside later on during like the reigns of his nephew Tiberius and then others of his line. You just get rid of this idea like, oh, well, I'm a god and do what I tell you to. Like they even get rid of this idea of like, well, you have to wait for me to veto that. Like it gets to the point where the emperor does what he wants to. He becomes that dictator for life, becomes that tyrant. That again, this is, at least from an American point of view, we're very afraid of that. And the Romans were very afraid of that too, and all of a sudden, now it's normal for them. It's just like, well, I guess it's just the way things are going to be from now on. So, interestingly enough though, when Octavian/Augustus does take power, it initiates a 200-year period known as the Pax Romana, meaning that life is good. Things in the Roman Empire and I'm going to say Roman Empire from now on, is incredibly good. And this is again one of those scary things for us today. Is like, could we jack ourselves so much in the American Republic where becoming more of an kind of imperial tyranny would actually preserve our way of life and make life good again? That's a scary prospect, because that's what happened with Rome. Because again, people don't really have any freedom here. Like, I'll just one example really quickly. I think I brought this up earlier in class, but one of the things Augustus did at the end of that Fifth Civil War is he just looked at a big map of what was now the Roman Empire and just said, you know what, I have all these soldiers, these hundreds of thousands of soldiers that have supported me. I definitely owe them something. So he's just like, all right, settle these 10,000 there, settle these guys there, settle these guys there. And there was already people living there. So he's like, screw you and the idea. That's not your land. I can say whose land this is. You get off that land. I'm putting my soldiers there to reward them for their service to me. Really saying that those people that lived there for generations, maybe even thousands of years, their families have been there in that area, and now kicked off their land because they really don't have any rights. There is no law protecting them because the Augustus is the law. So the dictator, the imperator is the law, which isn't really a truly free society. So anyways, but life, for the most part, unless you're those people that got kicked off your land, very good. So, and another thing that we look at is like all of a sudden it's safe to travel everywhere. You can travel from Syria, from the city of Antioch, all the way up to, say, Londinium on the British Isles, and be able to feel like you're safe in doing so, that nothing will happen to you. You won't get hit by bandits and things like that. Today, we love to look at the United States and think the same way. Like, I can get in my car and drive to Florida and feel like nothing's really going to happen. Everything is safe. Like, we take that for granted that we can do that. But to be able to travel that much of a distance, say from like Los Angeles to New York, and know that you're pretty much going to be safe the entire way, that's saying something for basically like what we could say the Pax Americana of today. So anyways, there's not many times in human history where that's really that possible. So anyways, but that's what starts here. And this, I'm just going to finish this off. This will be the end of this lesson at this point. This will be a very short lesson just because I wanted to focus on this idea of why this is viewed as the transition between republic to empire. What Augustus did to transition this to republic to empire, and why we today we're afraid of this. Not because it was this awful, awful thing. It's because, holy cow, he did fix things. But of course it sets up just one of those other reasons later on why Rome falls. To be so reliant on, say, one person, and why they also have these really bad, after the Pax Romana is done, once that ends, there's some really bad times coming up on Rome. Let's put it that way. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next lesson.